A couple of weeks ago, I closed out the show talking about a concerning population survey by a moving company. It showed New Mexico was losing its young population even as it gained residents over 65. Now, this week's census data and a legislative report bore out those survey findings. They come with all sorts of implications. So here to help us sort them is our Line Opinion panel. Joining us this week is Line regular and former state senator Dee Dee Feldman. Attorney and public safety expert Ed Perea returns. Good to see you, Ed. And Capitol Bureau Chief for the Albuquerque Journal, Dan Boyd, is back for another round. Now, the Legislative Finance Committee report says that state government would be wise to rethink how it delivers services, Dan. And in practical terms, what does that mean?
I think that means there's going to be some really tough political decisions on the horizon, especially when it comes to things like, do you consolidate schools? Do you eliminate certain colleges and universities? I mean, and obviously folks are going to fight for those in their districts. So I think that's going to be some painful decisions in the future. Obviously, we don't know for sure how the population will evolve, but at least based on those trends you report, currently we've had very modest growth over the last decade, but it looks, if it continues, like it'll actually start to decline New Mexico's population, which is a daunting, prospect, and especially given the state's looks like it's going to get older and older, and the birth rate's going to decline.
Mm-hmm. Those 3 or 4 things just mentioned add up to a big problem, because we're looking at a 2.83% growth rate over the past decade compared to the rest of the country, or the rest of even the region. How can we do this? How can we pull this off with declining birth rates and over 65 population booming? How does this go forward in a poor state like New Mexico?
Well, I think Dan has pinpointed where some of the political decisions have to be made, given our declining enrollment and also our growing senior population. The senior population consumes more resources. They also spend more money. So in that way, there may be some opportunities there. But some of these trends we've known about for a long time. There's been declining enrollment.
Yep.
We know that there has been a growth in the seniors. What is the big hit is those people in the middle brackets, the working age people, the young families, as you pinpointed in your commentary. They have been victims of the 2008 recession, and many have left the state for jobs. And also there's changing lifestyles. I mean, people are not buying homes. Right. People are not having children. Yep. When they are in their childbearing years. So that all bears decisions. But I think there's one thing that we haven't talked about. Okay, we have a 2% growth rate, and that is like causing everyone to sound the alarm. But, there used to be a time when people questioned whether continual growth was a good thing for our environment, a good thing for our economy, and asked, shouldn't we be figuring out how we can come up with a steady state growth, a sustainable kind of growth that still creates jobs but doesn't destroy everything in its path?
Mm-hmm. Was there a number, Dee Dee, attached to that in your time in the Senate? Had someone determined what that proper percentage of growth was?
No,
okay.
No, that's a philosophical difference.
Okay.
A lot of people feel that our society must grow very rapidly in order to maintain our standard of living. Mm-hmm. We have a very high standard of living. We consume a lot of resources. And so, part of that is problematic when it comes to climate change, mm-hmm. and consumption of resources, decline in species sometimes, yep. as a result of human activity.
Only takes a couple of degrees. That's right, just a couple of degrees, and nature responds. Hey, Ed, I got to tell you, this was a huge talker on social media for us on Twitter. Let me read you a couple things. Evelina V, just for her last name, said, education is a big hurdle. She also listed a number of areas the state should invest, including broadband education. Also was a big one for Brian Wade Boo, who told us it wasn't necessarily the reason he moved his family out of the state, but poor schools are keeping him from coming back to the state. And one last one, a fellow named Jerry Everhart pointed out education as well, in particular coupling it with business in the community to form training partnerships, and also targeting programs to high-need job areas like teachers, of course. There's a lot to chew on there, but what grabs you among those comments? Is there a similarity you're hearing?
Whether we're talking about growth or just maintain the population status quo, education is critically important, and there's no question about it. If we talk growth, it's incredibly important to be attractive to people, other people who want to move into our state. As the person on Twitter mentioned, he might not move back for those reasons. On the other hand, if you're seeking the sort of that steady state population, you want an educated workforce. I mean, right now we are looking at such a decline of the population under the age of 18. But for those who remain in the state, who are of school age, the quality of our education is important just to continue to move our state forward, technologically and leadership wise. I think, education is key also to quality leadership. So either way you want to look at this, education is a key component to moving forward.
Good points there. Dan, let me ask you about this. You're the demographic the state is after, if I can be so bold, the way you have your life set up. I mean, does this report in the census data ring with you with your concerns as a husband and a father and think about the future?
Yeah, it definitely it does. I mean, I've had a number of friends my age who have left New Mexico for jobs in Colorado or other states. And, we've decided to stay and are fortunate to be able to do so and love New Mexico. But I think, what both Dee Dee and Ed talked about, I mean, if there are not job opportunities for young professionals and not a good education system, I mean, I think a lot of families are going to look elsewhere. And I don't think that's a new revelation, but I think it's been hard for New Mexico to find those job opportunities, even to keep, its students in the state after they graduate, even if they do get a quality education, whether that's the film industry, now with the fledgling cannabis industry. I mean, maybe there's some signs of hope there on the horizon, but, not having that really strong kind of private sector like Denver or Austin or places like that, I think it's been hard to compete and hard to keep young folks here.
Dee Dee, I got one quick one here. Just got a couple of minutes left. One of the things that was not stated in the LFC report, but sort of glaring in its obviousness, is losing folks at a very key age in their late 40s and early 50s are also leaving our state. That's a dilemma because these folks are at the height of their skills, at the height of their, you know what I mean? That's a dilemma, and replacing that skill set is going to be another challenge, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. And I think that training programs and education, as others have stated, are important. But also, I think New Mexico needs to look to see the niches that it can fill, and the niches that it can fill from people perhaps leaving New Jersey, Connecticut, California, because the cost of living is so high, or the urban nature of those states presents a health hazard that nobody thought about.
But that didn't happen in 2020, did it? A lot of those folks just didn't come here at a time when there's a lot of swirl going around in the country. Why is that?
Well, I mean, we made no effort to attract them.
I think
we made
right.
no effort to attract them. Tourism is down, but now that people can work remotely, it seems to me that that's a marketing campaign that we have to start in order to attract that age group. And I think that age group is very environmentally conscious and could be attracted to our great outdoors and our landscapes.
We need to figure out how. Absolutely. Out of time on that one. We're talking government transparency when we return, and later in the show, the coming changes to New Mexico's pandemic public health plan.